So how does the recovery journey from a sexual addiction or struggle impact our mental health in a positive way?
Oh, in so many ways. I think about relationships. As we talked about earlier, loneliness is not a lack of friends, it's a lack of meaningful connection. And when you get into pure desire or good recovery, I think specifically about a life of no secrets. When you develop a life of no secrets where one or two or your whole group knows everything about you and you're constantly talking to them throughout the week and talking about how you're really doing, you feel known and understood and accepted. And that ends loneliness. And that would be one thing, because loneliness contributes to so many other things like anxiety and depression. Another thing would be, if I think about my own journey, the symptoms. So symptoms of trauma and things we have dealt with in life often will come out through stress, anxiety, depression, porn, and anger issue. The root cause is so often the same. And so in my life, as I was healing from or overcoming porn, what I was overcoming too was anxiety and depression. As I worked through the faster scale, as I understood that, as I started to put the pieces together. And I continually go back to Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. And so thinking about, in my life, anxiety, the pattern of anxiety I developed was very specific. It was a fear of rejection. It was, if I had to, thinking about high school or college, if I had to present before the class, that would put anxiety through the roof. Or even now as a speaker, sometimes that will happen. Or around people, or am I going to be rejected? Am I going to be bullied because my friends bullied me growing up. My dad was emotionally and physically abusive. And so that created this pattern of my brain is on alert, trying to avoid those things happen again. So anything that looks like it, smells like it, is like it at all, my brain would go into the state of fight or flight or anxiety. And that's because Proverbs 4:23, I had to look at my heart. What has happened to my heart? It had been wounded. Everything was flowing from that. Or depression, same kind of thing. When I gave up fighting the anxiety, eventually I would agree with it. Rather than trying to avoid the rejection, I'd eventually give in and agree with the rejection, that I am worthless, that I am not good enough. And that was kind of a way of, man, if I reject people, or if I reject myself first, then others can't reject me.
Yes, that's a thing.
And it's a way of kind of self-sabotage or, self-rejection, self-betrayal, all those
form of
terms.
Protection. It's a
And again, I had to look at my heart. What had happened to my heart? Oh, well, receiving this abuse, the rejection, these lies. Eventually, the lies felt so real, I didn't know they were lies. I was living out of these lies, believing that I truly was worthless, and that would just set me up again and again to feel depressed. And then with pornography as well. Pornography was a way to escape and to cope with those lies and those feelings. So often it's similar root issues, specific to us, because none of them are random. We say that anxiety and depression are signals to be answered. Like God designed you to have a fight or flight system in your brain to protect you, to jump out of the road. If you're crossing the road and a teenage driver comes, maybe one of Nick's kids learning to drive comes peeling around the corner. I'm sure they're great drivers.
Yeah, I know which one that would be.
Oh yeah, there we go. There's one.
Your fear system causes you to jump out of the way. That's great, but the problem is that gets hijacked for relational issues, rejection, other things. And God designed your brain that way to keep you safe. But then we have to learn how to heal from that and overcome that. And so as we're growing in sexual wholeness, if we're dealing with it in the way Pure Desire deals with it, or if we're dealing with it holistically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally, physically, then what we will see, like I saw, is anxiety going down, depression going down, and some of those symptoms even going away completely.
Yeah, what I hear you describing, Ben, is that we're moving from the what to the why. And I think in our Christian upbringing, if we grew up in that environment, we were taught a lot about the what. So I know I'm feeling anger, or I realize I'm feeling lust, or I realize that I'm feeling down and rejected. And I think in some of that training, we just took the what to Jesus, and we just confessed, I'm feeling angry. God, take this. I don't want to be an angry person. I leave it with him. And then it would, you'd be right back there the next day. I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling lustful. I'm feeling, and so the what didn't get us very far. But in the process of pure desire, like for me, it was all the whys of like, well, why am I angry right now?
Yep.
Well, because that comment someone made me feel a little disrespected, and disrespect can attach to being valuable or good enough. And the fear of not being good enough is deeply woven into my story and some of my themes from childhood. And so I had all these light bulb moments through pure desire of the why being kind of like, oh, that's why. And even lust, we've talked about it a lot on this show, that it's not random. Yes, we do have the capacity for lust, but the fact that we feel it, when we feel it, how we feel it is not random. It's associated to our why.
Right.
And when someone helps us see the why, well, all of those are mental health questions of why do I feel this? And so when we begin to really gain that self-awareness of understanding what's happening in my patterns of thinking, in my limbic system of the fight, flight, or freeze, and I can answer some of the why question, then I think I can really more authentically grow with Christ and others, because now I'm just not trying to surrender the what, but blind to everything driving it. Yeah. I'm actually letting people into that deeper stuff and being able to express those fears. I mean, I'd never really been able to voice, I have this pervasive fear that I'm not good enough, that I don't measure up, that I don't have what it takes. And when others hear that and know that about you and affirm you, it's like the level of connection goes way up, the level of belonging, and now it's, and when you receive that connection, then you're able to receive it, because it's not for your surfacey performance that got people to like you. It's like, no, they actually knew me. They knew my fears and worries and doubts, and they still accepted me. Well, now I feel like I belong because of my weakness. I belong because of my brokenness. And that's far more affirming in the long run than feeling like I only belong because of my success or my performance. And so I think that's where mental health is impacted for the good, is we're answering the why question. And that takes us so much deeper with God and others.
I think one of the things for me too is that when dealing with pornography, understanding the why, getting behind the behavior, and then starting to create sobriety and sexual wholeness, what I also saw more clearly was other areas of my life that were impacting my mental health. Food, fitness, was I getting enough sleep? Even things like what procrastination can do to us. Like, you're able to not only understand what's motivating these other behaviors that are impacting you at a holistic level, but then you're also given the tools to address those things. And so, like, my second time through 7 Pillars, it was far less about pornography and sexually acting out, and had much more to do with food and my addiction to food. And then, my life has been reshaped because of that. And so I feel like that's, and we'll kind of get into it a little bit later, but that's one of the things I think that can help maintain mental health for the long haul, is when you're able to address an area like this that keeps you in isolation and shame, and not only pulls you out of those things, but then gives you the tools to address anything else that you have in your life too. Because there is so much that can impact our mental health, not just our sexuality.